Welcome to OurSport. I'm your host, Larry. My son, John, is doing the recording and the editing. OurSport has just gotten back from our latest road trip of the year. We literally are recording this as we just got home from Illinois. We went to see Michigan take on the Fighting Illini in Champaign, Urbana. We'll get to that a little later. So this is about the halfway point of the season, the 2019 college season. And we thought it's a good time to go through what we think are the top 10 storylines so far with this year. Number 10, Matt Rule and the Baylor Bears. This is going to probably get a longer segment later. Rule was a coach who came over from Temple. It was kind of a weird fit for Rule to come over here because he's got a background in the Northeast. He's a Penn State alum. He coached Temple in that New Jersey area. And you're thinking, why would he go to South Texas to coach a football team? Well, Baylor is a Baptist school, and Rule's father was a Baptist minister, so they were a little bit simpatico in terms of their culture a little more than people thought. He got along well with the Texas high school coaches there, established some ties immediately. I think this is probably an olive branch toward that. And if you look at everywhere he's been, well, let's just say Temple, because he really hasn't been many other places. But they had what you look for. They had that constant, steady, linear progression. They have that at Baylor right now. They are 6-0. Had a big win yesterday against Texas Tech. And they have a couple of manageable games coming up. West Virginia, TCU, and Oklahoma State. None of those are easy by any means, but the back end of their schedule is where Texas and Oklahoma are. And they're off to their best start in quite a while. I don't know how much of a threat they are, Texas or Oklahoma, but the job he's doing, almost completely kind of under the radar, is our number 10 storyline. Number 9 storyline for the 2019 season, halfway point. The nation's leading rusher. So you would think it's Jonathan Taylor. That'd be a good guess. It is not Jonathan Taylor. It is Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State. Hubbard had 299 yards in one game. That inflated his stats, but his yards per game are through the roof, number 1 in the country. And this is a player getting no Heisman buzz. Jonathan Taylor is getting all the Heisman buzz of the premier back in the country and could legitimately deserve it. You're talking about a big back and breakaway speed with Taylor. But Chuba Hubbard flying completely under the radar outside of Oklahoma State and maybe some of the Big 12 competition. The number 8 storyline, Ohio State and their dominance. Now, when Ryan Day came there, he's promoted from offensive coordinator. You expected that he could do well with the offense. They've done great with the offense. Justin Fields come in, it's been seamless. But the story that nobody's talking about that is really different than last year. Last year they had historical struggles, and the Ohio State fans are calling that the worst linebacker core they've ever seen. You just knew this wouldn't last. Ohio State has too much talent. They have too many good players. And these things are not going to repeat themselves at a place like that. Well, this year, number 2 in the country in defense. Number 2 in the country in tackles for loss. Number 1 in the country in sacks. And you pair this with Ryan Day and what he's done, the improved play from the offensive line, which was an issue last year, seamlessly replacing all the litany of NFL receivers they had. This is why they're a number 1 team in the country, and this is the number 8 storyline so far to us. Number 7, Georgia Tech. So when Jeff Collins came to Georgia Tech, the thought was that this is a perfect fit. I agree with that. Totally different from Paul Johnson, but they've been bad, and you knew they were going to be bad. I talked to Georgia Tech fans who were optimistic. They were talking a bowl game. We mentioned that before. I said they're not going to have a bowl game when you start with Clemson and with Georgia. But they've been worse than they've thought. Right now, they're 1-5 as of this recording. Had a loss to the Citadel. And his main focus is recruiting. They've got to infuse that program with talent. This was not a focus of the last regime. I think that is absolutely the right call because of the area they're located in. But, boy, they're terrible on the field. This is more of an advantage you might think because he could sell playing time. He could say, you know what, to a player, Johnny, 5-star, linebacker out of Mapleton. You can come in and help us right now. You don't have to wait. You don't have to redshirt. You can come in and play for us right now. We need help right away. And that is an advantage at this point. However, if he doesn't start winning more games, this year you can kind of chalk it up as year zero. He almost gets a mulligan. But this is a bad-looking year zero. I don't know if they were this bereft of talent. Our number 6 storyline of the year, the Boise State Broncos. Hank Brockmeyer came in, true freshman quarterback. First game on the road, went up and down the field against Florida State. And this is a team that's been a G5 darling for quite some time. They had success all the way back to when Houston Nutt was the head coach. People forget about that. Dirk Cutter, Kellen Moore at quarterback. And again, they're a major threat to go undefeated. I don't know how much longer their head coach is going to be there, Brian Harsin. He's an alum. You imagine as a former quarterback there that he has a lot of reverence for this place. But the way they're going, they have a shot going undefeated. He could be gone. And all they need is a few breaks to go their way to get in the playoff mix. I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think that, let's say, for example, Georgia, who lost the first game of the year. Lost their first game of the year to South Carolina. If they go the rest of the way with one loss, you're not going to put Boise in ahead of a one-loss Georgia. And some teams look like they're not going to have a loss. Perhaps the Alabama LSU winner, Clemson, too many teams in front of them that with 0-1 losses would keep them out of the playoff. But a strong contender maybe for the Fiesta Bowl, maybe to go undefeated. Our number 5 storyline of the year. Is Alabama really that good? Now, we know what they are. You see Tua Tagovailoa play. He looks perfect with this. He's not the issue. He is tremendous. 27 touchdowns, 1 interception on the year. Can't argue with that. Sure, his receivers are helping him, but he's helping them too. He, like John had mentioned earlier, puts the ball in his stride. The slant that's supposed to go 6 yards goes 60, an arsenal of weapons. However, when you look at what Alabama has traditionally done, run the ball, play defense, right now they're 58th in the country in rush offense. This is odd to see. They're 36th in the country on defense and 47th against the run. This is so much different than the old Trent Richardson, A.J. McCarron type of Alabama teams that were just a few years ago. So they become a Big 12 team. Them and LSU have become the same team where we're just going to air it out. We're going to get a good quarterback. We're going to have an arsenal of talent. We've always had NFL players at the skill positions, or we're going to maximize this. And your defense suffers because of this. You go up and down the field. You play more tempo. And your defense will not be a top 10 defense this way. Now, you have some adjustment because of this, because your defense is playing more snaps. Even if you go by snap-weighted defense, this is not the same Alabama team. They're winning, but if you look at their competition, they're facing really inferior competition right now. They haven't taken on nearly the level of teams like somebody has, like Auburn has, and it's kind of inflated their numbers. The real tests are coming, not many of them, but a few. That game against LSU is going to be telling. I don't know if the playoff committee would do it. I don't know if I would put them in if they couldn't beat LSU. If they won the SEC championship, it's one thing. They're going to have difficulty winning the SEC championship without beating LSU. Number 4, Michigan. Overrated. The most overrated team in the country. That's what we call them. They're 5-1 right now. But as I mentioned before, me and John were at that game. And this team is not living up to expectations. Almost everything people thought this team would be, starting first and foremost with this offensive system and his quarterback, is not coming up to snuff. Michigan, they have many more losses coming. They're completely fraudulent with their record. All their tough opponents are ahead of them, and we expect them to go on a losing streak and finish the year in disappointing fashion. Number 3, Wisconsin. Talk about a team exceeding expectations. People thought Wisconsin was going to be 8-4, 7-5 type of team. A litany of different teams that were going to compete for the Big Ten West. Looked like a division without a front runner. And some teams have disappointed. Nebraska, for example. Purdue has disappointed, and Minnesota's overachieved. But Wisconsin is playing at a level above everybody else in the West right now. The defense is dominant. Jim Leonard, a defensive coordinator, really confusing opposing teams. And, of course, the Heisman frontrunner, Jonathan Taylor. super smart back, had an offer from Harvard. Turned that down, obviously. But he really has everything you want in a running back. Wisconsin has produced a lot of these guys who are products of the system because of the offensive line, the Monty Balls of the world. And some people on their own have simply been really good players. Melvin Gordon. Taylor looks like maybe the best back since Ron Dane. Top 10 legitimate NFL pick. And definitely a finalist for the Heisman in New York. This could be your Heisman winner. The number 2 storyline of the season, the complete validation of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts thrown out by Alabama for Tua Tagovailoa. You can't blame them for this. Tua is a generational talent. His accuracy is the best we've seen since maybe Drew Brees. And to say that Jalen Hurts did not look this way at Alabama, you could see that he was getting better. At the end of the year, last year, when he played more, when Tua got hurt, you could see that there was some progression. He improved his fundamentals. He wasn't the same quarterback as when he was a freshman playing for Alabama. But he's taken his game to a whole new level. Having an offensive mastermind like Lincoln Riley goes a long way. I will say this about him. Sometimes his receivers are wide open. He's throwing to guys who are schemed open. He is accurate. I'm not saying he's not. Tua will make a receiver better. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to make a receiver better because Lincoln Riley's making him better. Lincoln Riley is scheming it. And just watching some of the highlights, he'll run that deep post. There'll be nobody within 10 yards of the receiver. It's easy pitch and catch. It's not always the case, though, and he is executing, and you have to give him credit for that. So, our number 1 storyline so far, the 2019 season at the halfway point, is Joe Burrow and the emergence of LSU. Joe Burrow is also a quarterback who looks a lot different than last year. Now, this is kind of, I think, a bit of an emerging trend in college. This really didn't happen that much. You had, back in the day, you'd have a quarterback who would look a certain way, and he'd have a very kind of limited progression to how much better he would get over the years. He'd get better with scheme, but his fundamentals didn't get better. His accuracy didn't get better. We're seeing more of this because Joe Burrow looks like a different quarterback. I don't even recognize him from last year. Last year was kind of a caretaker. He did make some plays. This year, you see the way he delivers. His legs under platform, his snap delivery, his accuracy, coming up big in big games. He's carrying this offense. And what he's done is made LSU a legitimate and dangerous SEC contender and national contender. People thought that LSU would be good. I don't know if anybody expected them to be this good. And it's entirely because of Joe Brady utilizing his arsenal receiver and what he's doing in an LSU passing game. But the biggest storyline of the week, Georgia losing at home to South Carolina. Georgia's the better team. Everybody knows they're the better team. And a crippling loss. Finally, the season stopped being chalk. Finally, we had the upset that we were waiting for. Hopefully not the last one of the season. Let's talk about this one. We knocked Jake Fromm earlier in one of our episodes. We felt we're justified. We pointed out his stats in big games in the fourth quarter or big road games. And this is not really a big game until you're on the ropes, until you're starting to lose. That's when you need your quarterback to step up. Not throw 3 interceptions, not fumble the ball. And we have a lot of concerns about Fromm as a legitimate quarterback capable of winning the national championship. And I might start to worry a little bit if I'm a Georgia fan about Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart is an ace recruiter, one of the top recruiters in the country. That matters. But you're at Georgia. You have every resource in the world. Before they're having some issues quibbling about finances, that's not even the case anymore. The boosters have rallied. They're pumping money into the program. They have all the resources they can, and they're paying off on the resources. They're getting top 3 classes. They used to get top 10 classes regularly. They used to do well. Now they're becoming an elite recruiting team, kind of similar to how good Urban Meyer was at Ohio State, on Nick Saban's level at Alabama. And so when you do that, you're supposed to handle your business against teams like this. We were, as I said in one of the episodes before, at the game last year between these two teams, and you could physically see the difference in a line of scrimmage. You could see how much bigger Georgia was than South Carolina. You could see it. And when they moved the ball, you could see the effects of it. They're moving that ball. It took a little while. Really, from the first snap, they were kind of establishing themselves. By the third quarter, they were just surging off the line. South Carolina could not stop it. Well, they stopped it in this game. And I will say this. Kirby Smart did himself no favors with the comments he made. When he said, you've got to be ready in the SEC every week. Any team can beat you, something along these lines. If you're not ready to play, the physicality and the way it's a line of scrimmage league. Okay. Now, we're not SEC haters. I mean, we're Michigan fans, and you would think that there's like a Big Ten SEC thing. It's not. Well, we love the SEC. It's the best conference in football, and you can't deny it's the best conference in football. We've been to so many SEC stadiums. The crowds are awesome. They're great. It's fun. The teams are fantastic. Load of NFL players. You'll love to see it. So, no, I would say the SEC is the best conference in college football, and I would say it's not a doubt. However, you can't say that about every team. You can't say every team in the SEC because you got teams in here. Vanderbilt just lost to a bottom-tier Mountain West team. Vanderbilt just got blown out at home by UNLV. Arkansas lost at home to San Jose State. These are bottom-of-the-barrel teams in a Mountain West. So, yeah, if you're playing Auburn and their line of scrimmage gives you problems because of their defensive line, all the great players on there we've talked about at length, sure. But that's not your plan. You're playing a team better than Vanderbilt, better than Arkansas for sure. But this is the same team you killed last year. You killed this team. You ran up and down the field on them. You moved the ball with your offensive line. And that should have been the same result this year as last year. Kirby Smart, an elite recruiter. But the question to him now is he an elite coach? We don't think he's an elite coach. We think he's not to the level of Sabo or Dabo Swinney. To be fair, 3 or 4 years into Dabo Swinney's tenure, I would have said the same thing about him. He adapted, and you've got to say he might be the best coach in the country now. But Georgia, this sounds a little silly to say, might have a coaching problem. Because you get a lot of coaches come in here, if they could recruit like this, to win 10 games a year, which is what Georgia's doing right now. If you had this much talent, you could have a lot of coaches with similar results. And your coach is what makes the difference between being an SEC contender and a national title contender, a real national title contender. And I know, Georgia was in the national championship game against Alabama. They were one play away. Look at that play. Look at the play where Alabama beats Georgia for the national title. Look at the circumstances. Look at the context. Alabama has a freshman quarterback in there. Now, it's a generational freshman. It's Tua Tagovailoa. Sure. But he's a freshman. Has to come in the fourth quarter to bail out a team. Enormous pressure. And if you look at the play, he throws a touchdown play to win the game. Tua looks off to the right, looks the safety off, and throws the ball left for the touchdown. The safety that looked off, Dominic Sanders to Georgia, was a 53-game starter. A 4-year, 53-game starter got fooled by a freshman quarterback. Is that not coaching? That's coaching. Your 4-year starter should not be fooled by a freshman quarterback to cost you the national title. Your coach, the next year, when you have a big lead in Alabama in the SEC championship game, should not be panicking. Your coach should not be worried about what's going to happen and then call a fake punt. A useless fake punt that everybody agreed was kind of a dopey call and then try to defend it. Now, I will say this from where we are in Atlanta. We have a lot of input in this. We know more Georgia fans than anything else. And I would say a lot of them are not sold on Kirby Smart. After the fake punt, a couple of them call him Kirby dumb. Their words, not ours. But it just tells you the sentiment that, yeah, we're good, but we're really close. But maybe we're this close, and it's because of him. So as I mentioned, John and I had our third road trip of the year. We went to Champaign, Urbana, Illinois, to Memorial Stadium to see the Michigan Wolverines take on the Illinois Fighting Illini. We had not been to the stadium before. We like doing that, going to a new place, going in a day early, seeing the town, seeing the campus, seeing the stadium. These teams have a long history with each other. Illinois would consider Michigan their biggest rival in football. Michigan would not consider Illinois one of their 4 biggest rivals in football. That's kind of a common thing in the Big Ten. Teams consider Ohio State or Michigan their biggest rival, that the other teams don't particularly look at the respective team the other way. So, but this rivalry between them, and it is a rivalry, it goes back maybe 100 years. Robert Zupke, coach at Illinois, started in 1913. Coached there for 28 years. Won 7 conference titles, won 4 national titles. You have to be a little leery about the validity of the national titles before the AP poll was a consensus poll. But they claimed them, so that's fine. A lot of teams do that. But he had a feud with Michigan's legendary coach, Fielding Yost. The whole Big Ten hated Yost, with good reason. He was arrogant, he was boisterous. But Zupke had good teams, and they had some games go back and forth. Now, in 1924, the stadium we were at, Memorial Stadium, had a dedication game. Michigan was the opponent. Let's talk a little history here. And what happened is, Illinois had perhaps the greatest player in the program's history, certainly the greatest player on offense, Red Grange. You can see him right here. There's a statue of him outside the stadium. And in 12 minutes, he scores 3 touchdowns on offense and a 95-yard kick return against Michigan. By the end of the game, he scored 6 touchdowns, humiliates the Wolverines, and puts the program and himself on the map. You go further on, the 1963 Illinois team had their best defensive player, Dick Butkus, the best defensive player in their history. And they won the Big Ten, went to the Rose Bowl, beat Washington 17-7. They had just unveiled the statue of Dick Butkus the day before we got to this game, so our timing was great. And they've had a lot of contests back and forth. The contest people don't talk about that kind of sticks out to me because it's fairly recent. If you look at what happened in 2009, Rich Rodriguez is in his second year at Michigan. They were 3-9 in the first year. They're starting to build some momentum, or so they thought. They started 4-0. They had a bit of a losing skid, and they had one win against Delaware State. So they're 5-3 going into this game. They go from 4-0 to 5-3, and that one win against Delaware State. Really 0-3 against good teams. And they're in Memorial Stadium. They're controlling the game. It's 13-7. Michigan gets to the 1-yard line. First and goal at the 1. And they fail to score 4 times from the 1-yard line. That alone is bad enough. Illinois then goes 99 yards for a touchdown drive. Scores 38 straight points. Michigan never recovers. Lose that game, don't win the game the rest of the year. And I think that loss set the tone for the entire Rich Rodriguez era. They had more success the next year, but they still never got off of that. Their defense was atrocious. And you talk about a complete swing in terms of what can happen. First and goal at the 1, you go from that to the other team going 99 yards on you. Now about this game. Illinois was feisty. They came to play. Michigan had their best half of football, I think, maybe, I'm not kidding, maybe in the Jim Harbaugh era, not counting a Rutgers game. Because when you saw what Michigan did, 350 yards offense, about 200 rushing, and it looked legitimate. It wasn't like a fluke broken play here or there. The offensive line was dominating. They did what they did not do all year, pushing open huge holes against the Illinois defensive front. The running backs were making plays on their own even after that. Even with average play from the quarterback, which they got, the defense dominated. And of course, Illinois got back in the game, made it 28-25. Michigan kind of sealed things up after that. I will say this about the fans from what we talked to about their head coach, Lovie Smith. They want him gone. We were coming out of McDonald's, and a fan in the drive-thru literally pulled his window down to yell at us, to ask us to please beat his team 8-0 so they can finally fire their coach. They don't think much of him, and he's probably going to be gone after this year. But this is not a legitimate Michigan team. They're 5-1 now, and now all of their tough games are ahead of them. Penn State next week in a night game. Right after that, they've got a game against Notre Dame. While Michigan is going to Penn State in a night game, maybe the worst environment to play in a college football beside LSU at night. While they're doing that, Notre Dame is on a bye, has a bye week waiting for them. So we think the end of the Michigan season starts next week. They're fraudulent, 5-1, and this will probably be the end of the tenure. Well, I would say that this will be a tipping point in the tenure of Jim Harbaugh. Aside from that, the trip was pretty fun. We did see a lot. John and I managed to meet Ward Manuel, the Michigan State Athletic Director, and we had a good time at the stadium. It was a bit of a long drive. We don't fly to games. It's kind of a flaw of mine. So, thanks for watching our episode this week. Remember, we're on Facebook. It's OurSport College Football. It's a group page. If you want to get a hold of us at email, it's OurSport150@gmail.com. And we are on Twitter. It's OurSport3. If you have any questions about your team, get a hold of us. If you have any suggestions, we're open for them. We're here to service our customers. We're here to provide you the services that you want. So thanks for watching the episode, and we'll see you next week.